As a former Canadian politician who was in politics for 10 years, an elected official for 7, I've attended and spoken at a lot of press conferences. So when I tell you that I have literally just watched one of the stupidest and most idiotic press conferences in my life, I speak from experience. And given that I had to deal with Doug Ford, aka Fat Trudeau, and his idiotic mistakes all the time, I don't say that lightly either. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here's the media briefing from the Australian authorities on December 16 following the mass shooting at Bondi Beach. You know, the one where 2 Muslim men with links to the Islamic State, an Islamic terrorist group, opened fire on innocent Jews just celebrating Hanukkah at Bondi Beach. That one? Yeah. Let's tune in and see what Australian Federal Police Commissioner Chrissy Barrett has to say.
Good afternoon. Last night with Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke, I had the chance to lay a wreath at Bondi Beach after immediately returning from an overseas work matter. Between the time of this attack and until I landed back in Australia, I have had regular contact with the Prime Minister, with Minister Burke, with New South Wales Police Commissioner Lanyon, and with the AFP's Counter-Terrorism and Special Investigations Command, as well as senior Jewish leaders. These are my first public comments on the terrorist attack since I have returned to Australia. And I want...
So, I mean, that's a good start, right? It's a good start. At least she's calling it for what it is, a terrorist attack. You know, I'll give her a point for that one.
I want to describe this attack in my own words so there is no confusion and no ambiguity about the AFP's position. This was a barbaric attack against Jewish Australians. On Sunday, Jewish Australians were hunted down in broad daylight at an iconic Australian beach. The suspected murderers, callous in how they allegedly coordinated their attack, appear to have had no regard for the age or ableness of their victims.
Yeah, because that's how Islamic terrorists operate. That's how jihad works, right? They don't care. If you're an infidel, you're fair game.
It appears the alleged killers were interested only in a quest for a death tally.
Yeah, because that's what jihad is. That's what Islamic terrorism is.
Like October 7, 2023, we will not forget how that shocking attack forced Jews around the world to relive modern-day terror that should have been consigned to the history books decades ago.
Really? So, there was footage coming out of Australia on October 7, 2023, on October 8, 2023, one day after the horrific genocidal massacre of over 1,200 Jews in Israel. We were seeing footage coming out of Australia of all the savage pro-Palestine jihadi terrorists out in Australia chanting, "Gas the Jews, kill the Jews, Allahu Akbar." Do you not remember that? Really? Where's the Jews? 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 All of a sudden now you're paying attention, like, but what, October 8 is irrelevant?
In Australia, the AFP will never forget the date of December 14 and what it means for a community that deserves to live in peace and harmony. It is understandable and right that the community wants answers, and it is appropriate that the AFP and New South Wales Police provide this information, not only to provide answers to a community that is in shock and grieving, but also to protect how we live together safely in multicultural Australia, including...
Where were these comments when all of those savage Islamic jihadis were out in the streets in Australia on October 8, celebrating the mass murder of Jews in Israel and yelling, "Gas the Jews, kill the Jews, Allahu Akbar"? Where were you? Where was the police?
including calling out misinformation that could fuel retribution-type incidents. Because of these factors, we will provide information that does not impact on our investigation, noting that one alleged offender remains in hospital and is facing significant charges. Early indications point to a terrorist attack inspired by Islamic State, allegedly committed by a father and son. There is no evidence to suggest other individuals were involved in this attack. However, we caution that this could change given it is early in our investigation. Alleged evidence has provided investigators with a swathe of information that has enabled them to make this initial assessment about the alleged individuals involved and their motivations. These are the alleged actions of those who have aligned themselves with a terrorist organisation, not a religion.
Really? Really? As someone who's from the Middle East and as someone who has experienced Islamic terrorism firsthand, I can tell you without a shred of doubt, and you can take this to the bank, the Islamic terrorist attack at Bondi Beach, right, the one on December 14, where two Muslim men who were affiliated with ISIS, ISIS being the Islamic State, right? That's the Muslim terrorist group that goes around yelling Allahu Akbar while they chop people's heads off, yelling Allahu Akbar while they blow themselves up for the cause of jihad and Allah, yelling Allahu Akbar while they martyr themselves because they believe that the fastest way to get into heaven and get their 72 virgins is to murder infidels. Yeah, those guys? 100% motivated by religion. 100% motivated by religion. Because that's what it says in the Quran. That's what it says. Why do you think they call themselves the Islamic State? The amount of idiocy in this statement is mind-boggling to me. Like, I can't. She's literally saying, like, this idiot woman is literally saying that these men who were affiliated with the Islamic State, she even says Islamic State, right? So she says they're affiliated with the Islamic State, but it wasn't motivated by religion. How stupid are you? How stupid are you? How dumb are you? This is what jihad looks like. This has been the MO for the last 1400 years. The only difference between what's happening now and what was happening 1400 years ago is that 1400 years ago, people didn't have cameras. They couldn't film the incident. But today they do. This is probably one of the stupidest, most idiotic statements I have ever heard in my life. Not only as a politician, but as someone who is from the Middle East and understands Islamic terrorism, understands jihad. Again, as a former politician, I have heard a lot of stupid things, but this one here, this one takes the cake.
The New South Wales Joint Counter-Terrorism Team, which includes the AFP, New South Wales Police, ASIO and the New South Wales Crime Commission, is continuing to review the significant material seized during search warrants, and we will not provide further details of that material today for obvious reasons. The AFP and New South Wales Police have a responsibility to keep the...
What's even more frustrating and idiotic about this entire situation in Australia is that the Prime Minister comes out and he talks about strengthening gun laws as if strengthening gun laws will somehow prevent Islamic terrorists from mass murdering infidels. It reminds me of how in Birmingham, right, they're setting up the hostile vehicle barricades or whatever, right? Because apparently some vehicles are hostile, right? It reminds me of the foiled Islamic terrorist plot in Canada. It reminds me of the 3 Muslim men in the UK that were found guilty of terrorism, one of them with links to ISIS, and they were trying to import AK-47s illegally into the country. So what? Like, do you actually think that imposing stricter gun laws is actually going to stop Islamic terrorists? Really? Like, are you that stupid? I can pretty much guarantee you that the Australian government and the Australian police is a laughingstock to everyone in the Middle East, because those of us who are from the Middle East, we understand exactly what this is. We understand exactly what motivated this. It was their religion. And the Australian government and the Australian police have blood on their hands. They are responsible for every single death at Bondi Beach. You know why? Because when on October 8th, all those pro-Palestine Islamic jihadi savages went out in the streets celebrating, like the 7th century inbred savages that they are, celebrating the murder of Jews, celebrating Hamas terrorists. That should have been your clue. That should have been your signal that, oh, wait, we might have a problem in Australia. We might have an issue. Why are people going out and celebrating the mass murder of Jews? Why are people going out in the streets in Australia and yelling, Allahu Akbar, God is great? Do you think they're randomly yelling Allahu Akbar? No, they're yelling Allahu Akbar because this is motivated by religion. It's motivated by their religion. Why do you think they yell Allahu Akbar? This is jihad. This is what Islamic terrorism looks like. And because Australian politicians and Australian police are too scared to call it out, innocent people are being murdered. And what do they do instead? Instead of going after the problem, like they should have 2 years ago, back on October 8th, they're punishing Australians by strengthening gun laws and introducing anti-hate speech, right? As if anti-hate speech is going to make a difference. Give me a break. This is why you're seeing terrorist attacks in Western countries, because you have weak politicians, you have weak police, you have woke people who are too concerned about being politically correct. And what does that result in? That results in Islamic savages murdering innocent people. The Australian government and the Australian police have blood on their hands. And shame on you for not just letting the Jewish community in Australia down, shame on you for letting every single Australian down and gaslighting them about what the actual source and motivation behind the Islamic terrorist attack is. You need to grow a pair. You need to grow a pair before more people end up being murdered by Islamic terrorists.